Apologies if this video seems a bit lame, but I had been meaning to wake up to watch the summer sunrise for a few weeks, so I thought I would incorporate it into a short walk down the Southend Seafront. This walk starts at East Beach, looking east towards the rising sun. That particular morning, Venus, the symbol of the dawn goddess, ushered in the new day, but I was also surprised to make out Ganymede orbiting close to Jupiter on this, quite frankly, dreadful camera. Along the shore, bait diggers were already hard at work at low tide, whilst the hum of distant diesel engines broke the tranquil dawn. Evidence of arseholes from the day before presented themselves, and I walked by some campers still in their pits, something I too have enjoyed in the past, although not quite as so overtly as this at East Beach at least. As I awaited the sun's arrival, I considered whether the government's renewable plan was really working, and actually, half the time you see these turbines are not actually spinning. But we'll talk about the merits of nuclear energy over renewables at some other point. I also did a little bit of ship spotting, which is probably a little bit anorak, but whilst you're sitting there not doing a lot, it's something to do. Now this here is sea holly. Now allegedly you can dig this very spiky plant up and cut the root, and they actually used to sell it as like a candied snack. I've always wanted to do it, but I don't really want to spend 20 minutes digging up a root for a morsel of food. Once daylight had returned and the sea level was beginning to wax, I got underway. The first section of this walk goes through the old Shubery Garrison, which from the Crimean War up until quite recently in the 1990s was a weapon research facility, although actually a remnant remains at Foulness under the privatised group Kinetic. The base was converted to homes in the 2000s, although part of the site, known as Gunners Park, recognised as a site of scientific interest and as a wildlife haven, have been subjected to the council's development team. That does make me grumpy, but perhaps I'll leave that for another video where I'll rant and rave about the council's policy on building on wildlife reserves. This building here is just one example of one of the old gun emplacements that were used to test Army and Navy guns around the turn of the last century. Now, as I was walking around the wildlife reserve, I did happen across some wildlife. There was this rabbit here, and this large group of sparrows, which are getting rarer and rarer, it has to be said. Continuing on down the coastal path and past more of these gun emplacements, you do find more wildlife out along the sea wall here. However, they're a little bit too far out. You could just make out some red shank if I use the maximum zoom on the camera here. Out to sea, you can clearly make out the remains of a Mulberry Harbour, which were artificial piers designed to be used for D-Day landings in World War II. I have to be honest, until another YouTube channel called Beyond the Point made a video about them recently, I had always assumed that this was a Well, this was SS Montgomery, which made me feel a little bit stupid, to be honest. Going beyond the Coast Guard Tower, the walk now continues along the main footpath along the seafront. The first section is Thorpe Bay, and when I arrived, some guys were already out getting their jet skis ready for a morning on the water. If I'm totally honest, at this point I was becoming a little bit jealous that I didn't have any means of launching my kayak at the moment. But, you know, life goes on. As you approach Southend Seafront proper, there is one building that your eye will be naturally drawn to, and that is the dome of the Kursaal and the now empty bowling alley beneath it, which are all that remains of one of the most famous and the first amusement parks ever built. Most of the grounds, however, was sold off in the 1980s to build a dive of a council estate, but since I lived on it, I can say that without being judgmental. But right now there is another problem, that the council might have to buy back this historic building after selling it in the first place, but its Victorian aesthetic is also at risk from developers who want to build a tacky retail park over the road from it. You know, not that I'm bitter or anything. What I will say though is waking up this early in the morning, it really makes you appreciate the amount of work that goes into getting places like this, which are tourist sites at the end of the day, into being fairly presentable when people come to visit. And I didn't even realise that the tractors along here actually sort of ploughed the sand like this. But as they say, you can't polish a turd, and unfortunately a lot of Southend is looking rather shabby. I don't really understand why it got city status when so much of the high street and like this restaurant down here are basically derelict. Now the main attractions at Southend are Adventure Island, which is this small theme park, and the Southend Pleasure Pier. I was going to include that and actually come back and do a section showing you what the pier is like, but I shall save that for another video at some other time. But long story short, I don't really understand what's so pleasurable about a pier with just a council run cafe at the end, but again, I'll go into that another time. As you carry on down the seafront, you'll go past the Gentings Club, which is a bit of a run-down casino. One of the highlights of the seafront, actually, in my personal opinion, is the Arches, which is this small parade of small cafes, which always do decent breakfasts. So a little bit of a tip there if you're down for the day. In the distance here, I just spotted these fishing boats, which are operating out of Leon Sea, which we'll get to in due time. One thing from history which may be worth noting is the Crow Stone. Now the Crow Stone marks the boundary of where the London jurisdiction over the River Thames began many years ago. It may seem like London is quite a way away, but actually even in this video, in the distance here, you can see quite clearly the London Gateway port. So that is a constant reminder of just how close we are to being sucked into the vortex of the expanding London environment. Once you've passed the Crowstone, you're basically at Chalkwell Beach. Most of you, if you're visiting for the day for some unknown reason, and you're still listening to this video, you'll probably want to either return to Shubery by train or bus from here. But me personally, I carried on along the footpath to Old Leigh. Now I spotted a few egrets down the seafront, which I thought was odd as they're usually quite a timid creature, but I didn't realise just how tame some of them are getting. This one didn't even care that there was a bunch of people and dogs barking nearby, so it is interesting how these different animals are adapting to a more urban landscape. Now, on the way to Old Leigh, this way you'll pass the Essex Yacht Clubhouse, converted out of an old Navy minesweeper. HMS Wilton was an experimental design perfect for minesweeping because its hull is made from fiberglass, meaning obviously that there was less chance of being detonated by a magnetic mine. Leigh-on-Sea started out as a small fishing community recorded in the Domesday Book and gradually developed into a significant port by the 16th century. The Mayflower of the American Pilgrim fame supposedly came to Leigh to be outfitted before its journey to the States. Today, however, Leigh-on-Sea is more known for its pubs, restaurants and the old cockle sheds, which still sell locally caught shellfish today. One thing here that's worth mentioning is the boat Endeavour, one of the small ships that went to Dunkirk in 1940. That's about it for this walk. I did actually stop in and get some crab from one of the cockle sheds. Not actually locally caught, came from Cromer, but we won't mention that. And I just went to the train station here at Leigh and headed back to Shubery where the car was parked. As per usual, if you've absolutely hated this video, then please give it a thumbs down. And if you're subscribed and still for some strange reason are watching this and you didn't like it, then unsubscribe, do me a favour and leave me some abusive messages. Otherwise, I suppose I'll see you in the next video. See you soon.